our group, and they were the ones causing the problems. We had a party at Fifth Hope. We had hundreds and hundreds of strangers come through over the course of the night. I would not be surprised if the number topped 1,000. We had a lot of people over the course of that night. There were no problems, none. There was not a single incident that I remember that I heard of. I specifically asked about it, and people said, "We don't believe it, everything went smoothly." So these people who had never been to the area before, who were entering a complete stranger's house, who had no ties to these people, were more respectful than the people that we saw on a monthly basis.
It's because we thought you'd fuck us up. You're from Brooklyn.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know the reason for that. I'm open to thoughts of why that might be the case, but interesting observation.
Sucks.
What? New York sucks. There you go.
Know.
So the solution, at the time, it was close the doors, end the parties. That decision has been retracted twice and reinforced twice since then. Nobody likes the solution. Nobody wanted to do it, but we just couldn't think of something better to do. The parties became invite only. There are sometimes parties on non-2600 events. So maybe it's just everybody who's in 2600 is a scumbag. Don't know. No way, no way.
Absurd notion. I'm flabbergasted.
Yeah, it's a bitch move, but can you blame me? Nobody liked this solution, and it's still, just trying to figure out what's acceptable, what's not, where the line is, how much babysitting you have to do with people, and how much you can allow them into your home and offer them your hospitality without worrying that they're just going to take advantage of it and screw you for it. So these are no longer my decisions because I moved out a while back. Now I have to fight for couch space too, which kind of sucks, but at least I'm not responsible when the police get called, so I guess it works out. And there's no simple answer to this question. It's just keep tweaking it, keep trying to find the balance that works for the time and for the people involved and for the events you want to throw.
Get a space you don't live in.
Get a space you don't live in.
I don't live in the Hacker Halfway House.
Sure. People still ask me, can I come over to the Hacker Halfway House? I'm like, okay. You might want to ask somebody who lives there first, though. All right, next project. Still got plenty of time. Yeah, another failure right here. Oculate.net.
Oh, organic.
Organic?
It's grew organically. What? You didn't play.
Okay, apparently Oculate.net is now organic. Can I get a vote of confidence from the hippie?
Kosher?
All right, so Oculate.net is a project I started 6 years ago. It wasn't even really a project at the time. I put up a shell account box, ran my own mail server, put up my own web page, and hosted something on a static IP and didn't have to go through somebody else for it. And started it at home, no big deal. The first box that I had up for the server, the case for the machine hadn't even arrived yet, so I had the motherboard sitting on a block of foam with the power supply sitting next to it and the drive sitting next to it. So it started off kind of sketchy, but since then, gangsta, yeah. Since then, it is got better and better as I've done things like get a job and have money to pay for things, like a case. I had the case, it was just in the process of being shipped. And then when I got it, I didn't want to turn the machine off, so. Yeah. These days, I've got about 70 users on the system. The machine is now hosted in a colo facility in Boston. A number of people, a large quantity of people, more than I thought, using it as their primary email addresses and web space. And it's all the basic internet services. People mostly use it for getting on IRC, 2600net with a shell, but they also use it for email and web hosting, secondary MX, secondary DNS, network backup, file storage, all that good stuff. And it's working out really well. I pay for everything out of my own pocket because I'd be doing it for myself anyways, and I can afford it at this point, so it's not a big deal. It's interesting. It's a lot of time and a lot of work, but it's good. But as always, there are problems. Of course, I'm on the internet, so I've been hit by denial of service attacks. Nothing as massive as the 20 megabit SYN flood, but sometimes I'll get DDoSed and I won't even know why. Somebody will just have picked my server out to hit for no apparent reason. Now I've got an ISP that is actually responsive, and if I ask them to filter things upstream, they do it, and the problems are considerably less because I'm putting money into it. A lot of people also try breaking into the system because, for one reason or another, people consider it high profile. It's also partially due to 2600net. A lot of people on 2600net are coming from this server and pissing people off and getting DDoSed or trying to
Wasn't me.
break in.
Someone else.
Yep. Yep.
Like I never pisses anybody off.
Nope, never.
I'm lovable.
There's been some abuse of resources, but for the most part, not so much. It does happen though. One of the biggest problems was initially, before I had all of the money to float a new machine and a professional colo and all of that, hardware failure. If a hard drive dies from being old or being in a place that has toner dust in the air and turns the cats black and makes you cough up nastiness for a year. Well, the cat was white. But
Maybe that's a better thing. It makes an improvement. I understand why a white cat turns black is a problem. Black cat turns white, it's a benefit.
I'm not saying anything about the quality. I'm just saying it's
CCNA.
Maybe
All right.
colors, another
Racist
color
whore?
might be better.
I think we understand where you're going.
There's CCNAs and there's CCNers.
Yeah, so what are the differences with a system like this from the others? The biggest thing is, because people are looking out for their own on this system, if somebody is doing something that is questionable, the system is self-policing. If somebody is acting in a way that might bring the services under attack, the other people who don't want to lose their email and their web services will say, cut the shit, because if you don't, I'm going to kick your ass because I'm not going to be able to get my email. So I don't need to be a personal enforcer on all this because everybody else does it for me. It's pretty nice. With the hack attempts, people aren't good at what they try to do. They're like, I'm going to scan you to see if I can, hit you with some Microsoft IIS vulnerability. But it's kind of funny because I'm running OpenBSD on a non-x86 machine, but people still are probing port 139 and trying to do weird stuff. But if there is a problem, then if somebody brings something to my attention, or even if it's not a critical security measure, they just need something done, they just come right to me and it gets done. In a system that's this small, this is feasible. In this case, a benevolent dictatorship works better than a democracy because I still have the time and the effort and the resources to actually handle the problems. If it was 10 times the size, there's no way this would work. But it's still small enough that direct management works, and for now, that's just how it's going to be. People are also very helpful. If somebody wants something installed, for example, my basic response is, I'll do it if I have time. If you can do all of the prep work for me so that I just have to run a few commands, it'll be a lot more likely to happen. So the users who want a service will do the work for me because they want the service for themselves. So they're doing the work for themselves and they just need a final ratification of this service change by me. And in this case, again, it's small enough that this works and I trust my users enough that this works. And that's another point that I'll bring up in a second about trusting your users. The misuse of resources, nobody is going to do that because nobody wants to have their access pulled. I've only had to pull one person's access permanently, and they just didn't get it. But everybody else has realized if I do something stupid on your system, I will have my account pulled. So I'm not going to do something stupid. It works. It's not the best system. It's not the most automated system in the world, but it works. And as for hardware failure, people were actually, because of their involvement in the project, even if only as a user, if something died, people would offer up money and hardware in order to fix it. Again, it's still operating under the benevolent dictator model, but users are still involved. They still make up the system. They are the reason the system exists. And so if they realize if we do something, then we will get more back, it's worth it. If you make your users feel like this is actually a valuable exchange, that they are getting something back for their time, for their effort, for their money, they will contribute. And when you're this small, this is really the best way of going about doing it. You don't need to be rich. You don't need to have tons and tons of time. Just provide something that works and tell your users, if you give me something good, you will maximize your ROI, minimize your TCO, et cetera, but it works. It does work. And it's a different kind of community. It's basically invite only. I will not give an account on the system to somebody I don't know and don't at least marginally trust. This often makes me look like an asshole, and that's okay. You should not feel guilty.
Like a racist or a whore.
Yeah, as long as I don't look like a racist or a whore. Actually, whore's okay. I mean,
White guilt! White guilt!
you're making money, so it's not so bad.
They're dicks, they're pussies, and they're assholes.
Making something invite only, it does breed an air of elitism. And this is something you need to watch out for. And you need to make it very clear. I'm not doing this because I like to be a dick and I like to exclude people. You're doing this because you want to say, I need to make sure that I can let this community self-maintain itself. And if somebody understands that, then usually they go, oh, okay, that's cool. And if they don't, they just get pissed off at you and you never wanted them anyways. Usually when somebody would ask me for an account and I would have no idea who they are, my response would be, well, why don't you introduce yourself to me? Buy me a beer, talk to me for a bit, and get to know me. And if I think you're not a shitbag, then I'll probably give you an account. And some people are like, oh, okay, cool. And then do that, and they get accounts. Some people would be like, oh, I can't believe you're such a jerk, and not talk to me again, and I'm okay with that. So there's nothing bad about maintaining a reasonable bar for entry as long as you're not using it to specifically exclude individuals and you're using it actually for the greater good as opposed to boosting your own ego and trying to breed elitism. It works. You have to fight those statements of this guy's being a jerk, but it does work. And the benefit for doing this is that your users do your work for you. They contribute, they self-monitor, they self-regulate, and wash dishes. They do. That's true. So what you're doing is you are basically putting in a reasonable admission system in exchange for having people feel welcomed and comfortable and feeling like if they do give back, they are contributing to a community. You're building a community as opposed to running a project for your own personal gain. If people think that you're just doing it for the fame, for your ego, for the ability to exclude people you don't like just because you don't like them, if you do all of that, then yeah, no. I give money. So if anyways, now if you do all these things, then your users will actually feel like it is something worth giving back to, and everybody wins. You build a community. That is the goal, to build a community as opposed to build a ego-based system where you get to be king, like King Openfly over there.
Yeah. They removed my Optum after that.
Yeah, well, the downside is, with this kind of system, is that the person in charge, whether you're doing it for the ego boost or not, if you don't do your job, people will lose confidence in you, and then you won't have anything. You have to do the dirty jobs in order to build the community, and if you're even looking for respect, you actually have to do something in order to get the respect. You have to offer the system, offer the service. It has to be up. It has to be available. If you don't do that, then people are just going to call you an asshole and not look up to you. And that often requires a lot of time commitment